Welcome to the Agile Career Podcast, where we will take you on the journey from employed for life to employable for life. We'll give you the tips, insights, and strategies to help you build the transferable skills that you'll need. So let's get started. Please welcome your host, Gunther Richter.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of the Agile Career Podcast. I'm really happy you can join me here again today. Today's topic is, as always, an interesting one, but this is one of those strange topics that when you mention it, either one really gets people excited, or on the flip side, tends to fill them with dread. And that topic is sales. Now, the important thing that comes out during this episode and the interview, without taking too much away from it, of course, is the fact that we are all effectively salespeople. So we might not have a job title that says salesman or salesperson, but we do have to be selling ourselves all the time. Think about going for a job interview. Effectively, you're selling yourself. So it's really important that all of us, to some degree, have these sorts of skills. And that's why I've got Doug McGeachie on the interview today. He's going to be providing us with some really great insights and some tips and some strategies. He's going to tell us how he built a very successful career in sales. But before we get started on that, I'd just like to remind everyone about the review party that we've got going on at the moment. What I'd really like you to do is, if you like the show, or even if you don't like the show, please go along to Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you listen to on and leave an honest review. And what I'll be doing on the 13th of June is selecting a lucky winner. I'll be doing a random draw of people who have left reviews, and that person will win a £15 Amazon gift card. So please remember, there is a cutoff date. You need to get that review in by the 12th of June. Go to your favorite platform, leave an honest review, and then just get hold of me. You can email me at info@agilecareerpodcast.com. Let me know you've left the review. You can grab a screenshot of it or whatever, so I know who left the review, and you'll be in line to win a £15 Amazon gift card. So, right, let's get into the interview and enjoy this. It's a cracker today. Hello, Doug, and I'd like to welcome you to the Agile Career Podcast. I'm really happy to have you on the show in this episode.
Hi, Gunther. Pleased to be invited along.
Yeah, super. Well, I really do appreciate you making the time, and I know it eats into people's evenings and that sort of thing, so it's very much appreciated, both by myself and I'm sure the listeners as well. I guess before we get started in some of the detail, the reason I wanted to interview you on the show was a reason that lots of people talk to me or approach me with challenges they have, and it's when they transition careers, they often find themselves lacking in certain skills, and sales skills are one of the things that they often either think they don't have or they might have and they're not confident in. You know, they've not traditionally done sales, or it's not been a formal part of their job description. And, an example, someone moving from government sector work and going contracting now has to go out and sell themselves and sell their services. And, they don't often know how to get started. So that was the intent. And, you've got a really robust career in sales, and that's why I thought you'd be a really good addition to the show. But before we get into that, do you want to take a few minutes and just introduce yourself and talk a little bit more about your current role and how you got there?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi everybody, Doug McGeachie. I've just joined a company called Snowflake, actually. Joined them back in December, so I'm about 6 months into that role now, and a sales director down there for part of the enterprise division. And what that entails basically is looking after a number of key clients and being responsible for the sales to those clients. And they're kind of some of the larger organizations that you might see out there, the likes of Willis Towers Watson and Maersk and Johnson Matthey, and a kind of broad brush of large enterprise. My history kind of goes all the way back to kind of coming out of university, not really actually knowing what to do with myself, and kind of just starting off my working career, as quite a few people think I do, and that's in the kind of hospitality and catering industry. So started off there, and then from there powered into IT distribution from a broadline perspective, which was about selling IT into organizations that were then selling it back onto the wider market. then got very specialised in that area. Fancied a change, wanted to do something different, moved in, still within the bubble of IT, which is a very big bubble, but moved into an organisation called Symantec. A lot of people might know it as Norton, but again, focusing in on the enterprise sale, and like I said, just recently left there to join Snowflake.
Yeah, so it's been quite a journey, and I guess going back to the university days, as I said earlier to you, it's no surprise I've fully stalked you on LinkedIn. I saw that you studied product design.
Yep.
What in terms of what was your thinking around that? What sort of job was in line for you? Studying product design. What did you have lined up, or what were your thoughts?
So at school, I was one of the jocks, one of the lads. It was all about rugby and rowing for me, and going down the pub and having a couple of cheeky drinks. And I suffered quite a bad injury playing rugby, and ultimately that's where I wanted to go originally. I wanted to go off into a sporting career. That was knocked on its head, and I suddenly realised I had to actually focus in and try and do something else with my life outside of sport. And design certainly had been the thing that had captured my attention the most. I was quite creative, still am to some degree, and it was the area that I thought most represented me. The challenge I actually ended up having was I was much more of a conceptual designer, and when I was at university, it was very heavy on the engineering side. So really getting into the nitty gritty of it, which just wasn't to my skill set at the time. And so, yeah, I kind of come out of university with nothing because I didn't actually finish the course completely. And it was kind of one of those, what do I do with my life now? Because I was going to be a sportsman. That didn't work out. I was going to go and do design. That didn't work out. Where to now?
That's a really great point you make. And, obviously you found that challenge early on in your career. We find many sportsmen do have successful careers in sport, but those aren't sustainable in terms of the physicality and those sorts of things. And they often end that career and then they don't have anywhere to go. So I guess it's probably a journey you took earlier than later potentially. So it's really good that you drew that out. So then, realizing that the sporting career wasn't an option, you mentioned that you went into hospitality and catering.
Yeah.
How did you get started? What was the draw card there?
It was a couple of things. So I did silver service at places like Silverstone. So I worked the VIP suites and everything down there. It was just great fun. And you're there with a load of people your age. And then I also had a huge conference centre that was just down the road from my parents' house. So I worked there doing everything from kind of the bar to restaurant to the silver service, into the events. I helped with the conferencing as well, and actually ended up in the night security role. I worked out very quickly it was the role that paid the most amount of money and probably actually required the least amount of effort. And I was fortunate enough to work with a guy there called Kenny Houchin, who was an old Londoner, and he used to tell me every night that I was wasting my life, and that his son was working at this great IT place, and he was earning good money and going on these holidays and getting prizes and incentives, and that I shouldn't be wasting my life on night shift. I should be out doing something like that. So I actually listened to Kenny, and I took a punt, and I sent my CV out to a number of recruitment agencies and sent it directly into that IT company, and actually got a job interview from my direct engagement, much to the annoyance of the recruitment companies. And the rest from there was history, really. They took a risk on a young guy who had no IT experience, but probably demonstrated a little bit of initiative. I still remember having to try and close so I had a face-to-face, and then I had to go home and then try and close them on the phone. That was the objective. So yeah, pick up the phone, called my boss back, or who then became my boss, Kathy Lowe, and had to try and close her there on the job. And she made it quite tricky and difficult. But I kind of got there eventually, and she was like, "Right, there you go, well done, you've got the job."
It's a
And
good
yeah,
bit of try before you buy, I think. And yeah,
yes,
good advice from Kenny. In many instances, you might consider him a mentor. I think
absolutely.
obviously sets you off in a really good direction. So I guess yeah, hence sales, but or in fact starting an IT company. What did you think I'm applying for a sales job, or I just want to go into IT? Did you think about doing anything technical? What sort of led you to the sales bit of that job?
So the one thing that I'd learned, I suppose, up until that point is that I was competitive because I've been playing a lot of competitive sport. I When I was at university, I lived with three guys who we ended up running a night at a local nightclub, and I used to go out and promote for it and try and get sponsorship for it. It was just my way of contributing. So I learned very quickly that I could actually engage with people, and then obviously doing the hospitality and catering, working on the bar and the banter and everything. I kind of learned that, yeah, people skills. I kind of had that. I was competitive. That was good, and I was willing to, and I always have been, and still am willing to learn, and I never considered myself to be the kind of finished article, right? So
Yeah,
I approached it. Go on, sorry.
no, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I approached it with that kind of mentality. It was IT sales purely because that was where Kenny's son was, right? And it just sounded really good and interesting. And um, I still remember going live on my first day, and yeah, it was scary. The adrenaline was pumping, and you're there, and you've got a list of customers that you've got to call out to and get to know these people, and then start to understand what IT needs they might have, and work it from there. And um, yeah, it was pretty hectic, but that was the sort of environment. It was kind of get on with it and push yourself, and if you do, then success could potentially be yours.
Yeah, as you've been talking there, certain themes are already starting to emerge around those sort of transferable skills that I always talk about. And it's things like people skills, the ability to engage, being competitive. I mean, absolutely in a sales environment, willingness to learn obviously serves you well in any environment. So, those are clear skills that you picked up, I think, both in the hospitality and catering business and your informal selling entry to your tickets to nightclubs. So, really, really great bits emerging there. But when you landed, did you find there were any gaps? When you said it was really scary on that first day, were
Yeah.
there things that sprung out and you thought, oh, I don't know these, I don't know this stuff?
I mean, we used to have this huge. I mean, we're back in the day of faxes, right? So orders are coming in faxes. Email was only just starting to be used, and we had these huge books, and that book was the Bible basically, and it was 75,000 odd part numbers in there, and a description and a price, and then we had an SAP system. And luckily, there was a support team that you could call on if you were getting stuck or you didn't understand something. So I'd used computers at school and at university, but I hadn't really used them. Not in the sense that I didn't really understand what a modem was or what a network card was or anything like that. So luckily that support network behind you was there, and you pick up the phone and be like, right, I've got a customer, they want a 10100 NIC card. What's one of those? And they'd be like, right, try these or try these. Oh, okay, cool. And that's the piece that you can't be afraid to just stick your hand up and kind of say, look, I don't get it, I don't know, I'm going to come and ask. And yeah, that there was that great pre-sales um, team that helped us out there. And then you'd be amazed how quickly you do learn, and you become a master within that subject matter area.
And I guess, as you say, the key thing there is asking for help and, not being afraid to
Yep.
put your hand up and say, I don't know. But also that willingness to learn, sometimes it's, well, I guess certain people find it easy to sit back and just say, well, throw my hands up in despair. I don't know. And I'm not willing to learn this. But, that obviously that willingness to learn serves you well. And in terms of those skills serving you and, looking at your career, you've had, guess different roles within the same organization, but you've had really long tenures at the organizations you've worked for. And I think, as we know in sales, obviously good tenures mean that you're very successful. I guess a salesperson or a someone doing business development is like an actor. You often only as good as your last movie. And you do find in the sales environment, people are very transient. People move on quickly, and I think that shows that you obviously very consistently hit targets and did what was expected of you. I mean, and of course, what happens when you make target in year one. The year two target is is even higher. So I mean, how did you approach that in terms of making sure that you could consistently hit those goals and sort of keep that growth, keep that snowball going almost?
So, I mean, there's a couple of things. I certainly, in the early part of my career, the first 14 years I spent at the IT distribution company, I had 10 different jobs, 10 different roles whilst I was actually in that company. And again, it's that it's being prepared to challenge yourself and push yourself and learn how to cope and deal with things. Day one, when I first joined, I had what was I delivering? Probably something like £300,000 or £400,000 a month of sales. 3/4 of the way through, I was general manager of a sales division with 50 odd people under me, running £500 million turnover, and that actually, in the grand scheme of things, was probably only over about 8 years. That transition from kind of day one to that period, and people always say to me, "Oh, you can't do that." Well, why can't I do it? Well, because it's you don't have this, you don't have those skills at the moment, or you've not learnt that area, or you've not, and that's something that I continually challenge. So when I did that role as the general manager, I was the youngest general manager, and still to this day, the youngest general manager that organisation's ever had. And that was the thing that people said: "You're too young. You can't do it." Well, no, that's not a reason for can't. And the same when I actually left that organisation and I went to Symantec, it was working directly with big end users, with enterprises. I didn't have that experience, and I interviewed at a lot of places, and they'd be the usual suspects that you'd expect somebody in IT to want to go to, the big houses, and they all turned around to me and said, "You can't come because you haven't got the experience of selling into that sector." No, I have proven sales experience and history and pedigree in that, just not in that area. And luckily, when I joined Symantec, I found somebody in Lorcan Kavanagh who was able to recognise that I had that skill set, and it didn't matter that I hadn't sold to enterprises before. And I then had an extremely successful career at Symantec, where I ended it as number one sales rep globally. That's out of like 2,500 salespeople. So it's one of those, I never accept you can't do it. You've got to always challenge and push those boundaries.
And I think that just demonstrates again those transferable skills. As you say, you had those I guess softer skills in terms of people skills and engagement and networking. You developed the more functional skills, and those were lifted and shifted. And absolutely, yes, you didn't have experience in that sector, or perhaps in that sort of tier of client, but I guess it was people interviewing you, recognizing that you did have those and saying, okay, well, these are really going to land well. So again, I think just highlights the importance of building those skills and being able to take them with you. So you talked about starting I guess down with a lot of the detail in terms of selling computer components, and kind of worked your way up to general manager leading a substantial team. So it was a transition in itself, still at the same organization, still within sales, but kind of moving more, I guess, from the day-to-day aspects of sales to I guess a leadership role. And I guess that comes with different challenges, in terms of the challenges you might face in doing a purely transactional sales role. Did you experience any of those sorts of challenges?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I love leadership roles, and it's I love to try and work with people and coach people and take people on a journey. And I'd like to say over the years, some of my greatest successes have been finding individuals that have been at that grassroots stage and helping grow them as individuals to something absolutely unbelievable, right? And I can think of a few people where I've been fortunate enough to have them as part of my team and work with them, and they've had that drive that I have as well to want to progress. And if you've got that, then I can absolutely grow and mold you, and get you on into wherever you need to go or whatever you want to do. But the individual contributor role, which is a standard sales role, it's individual. You are responsible for yourself. If I don't hit target, I've only got me to look at. As a leader, you you have the people and you have them as the responsibility, and people come with a lot of baggage, right? And people can't always cope with that or deal with it very well, and they don't like it, and they try and broad brush it. I'm a very firm believer in psychological profiling as much as possible. So I used to do a lot of disc analysis and Myers-Briggs and that kind of stuff to really understand the people, because telling one person that what they're doing is going to show them up, they might not care. But if you turn around to that same person and say what you're doing is really going to let the team down, then they'll really care about it. And it's about understanding that person, that individual. And that's why I really enjoy those leadership roles as much as the individual contributor roles.
And I think, I mean, you mentioned DISC and Myers-Briggs, and I think it was in episode 2, I probably talked a little about these profiling approaches or tools or tests. The Belbin one, I know, is a popular one as well. So it's good to hear that obviously they're not just theoretical. I mean, I myself have gone through them in various stages of my career, but it's really good to hear them in action and, see how you kind of move from that individual focus to that team focus, and to have people understand the role that they play in that team. So that's a good takeaway, I think, from growing into that leadership role. I mean, were there other challenges you faced, or, gaps that you thought, okay, well, there's new stuff I need to learn now, whether it's dealing with people's baggage or those mentoring skills?
It's very easy when you're the individual contributor to sit there and moan and be like, oh, the company's doing this, the company's doing that. And when you're then in that management or leadership role, actually having to deliver the message, even though you don't necessarily always firmly believe in it, but it's the message that the company needs and the company wants you to deliver. That was a learning experience. It's easy being the manager and leader that's everybody's mate, right? But when the times are tough and the chips are down and everything, actually being able to deliver that message and still work with the people and have them understand where it's coming from. They might not like it, but being able to deliver that was a learning experience for sure. I mean, I was only a youngster as well. Like I said, I was 27. First management job, I was 23, I think. Yeah, 23. Which, when you're looking after a load of 10, 15 sales guys who are all highly charged and competitive and everything. Yeah.
What sort of approaches did you take to I guess build those skills? Or, I'm just kind of speculating now, but letting someone go, for example, that's never a nice thing to do, regardless of the circumstances. But as you say, it's kind of sometimes moving away from that individual focus to that team and organization focus, and knowing that you have to do these things that aren't sometimes pleasant. What did you take any particular approaches to build those skills?
So one of the things that I do a lot of, even still to this day, I love to read up on sales techniques, on coaching techniques, on principle-centered leadership and leadership techniques. So if you look at my my Audible list, because typically I actually consume it better through listening. I'm currently listening to Leaders Eat Last, which is an interesting approach. and it's all around how the leader positions themselves, and it's how the Marine Corps actually, in the US, the leaders don't go first. It's that hierarchical thing that the troops get to go in first. So I'm always trying to learn about different techniques, and then the same from a sales perspective as well, right? So you talk about spin selling and Sandler and all of the other sales
Scotsman
coaching.
and those things, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And MedPick or Medic or however you want to break that down, and de-risk. And so I'm always challenging myself from that perspective, just to keep ahead of it. I think the one person who's had the biggest influence on my whole life, outside of my heroes like Dad and Michael Schumacher and Gordon Ramsay and those kind of guys, right, is Stephen Covey. And I absolutely love his work. You can't go wrong with that. And then also his son's work, Stephen R. Covey, who has since produced things like The Speed of Trust and that kind of stuff, which is, if you've not done it, it's definitely worth doing.
Yeah, I can attest to that. One of the ones that came from that I ended up doing was helping clients succeed, and again, sales focused, but it's not focused on achieving that end number and that sort of thing. It's really focused on helping the client and the customer achieve the outcome. So, it's again very people focused, very outcome focused, very value focused. So there's some great takeaways there. And what I'll do as well is in the show notes, I'll post some links to some of these things so listeners can just go ahead and click on those and get some more insight about these things that we've covered off.
Can I just get a reference in then for Legacy as well for James Kerr, because that's a great read.
All right,
especially
brilliant.
If you're a rugby fan, right?
Absolutely. And I was going to ask you at the end of the show recommendations on reading, but I've got quite a few here, and no surprise that you brought up rugby, because I'm going to do that a little bit later. So one of the things that I just taking away from that conversation there is building out a toolkit, if you want, of these sorts of skills and things that you can use. And I guess not one approach is the one a killer approach. You probably find that you take bits from different toolkits and approaches and have this toolkit, like you can use like a literal toolkit and use that to solve problems. So I think that's a great bit of advice that you shared there. So moving on to rugby, I have reliable advice that outside of your day-to-day job as a salesperson, you do coach rugby, and I guess this is a disclosure on my part that I know Doug because we coach rugby together. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and perhaps some of the skills that you feel you brought from your professional career onto the pitch?
I tell you what, you want to try and move from 10 or 15 adults who are salespeople and highly competitive to then trying to deal with a squad of 30 kids. And then you realize actually what management and leadership is actually all about, because the adults are way easier than the kids. And actually, again, it was something around just challenging myself. And my son Callum was really keen for me to kind of join the coaching squad, and I was just at that point in my life where I was like, you know what, let's do this. I think I've got some stuff that I can input and add, and so did year one with the squad, which was brilliant, and that was kind of like that foundational year. We had the big swap around in the team, and the head coach decided to leave, and Cal was just like, Dad, you got to go for this. You got to go and be the head coach. And I was like, why? Because it would be great to have you there. Well, okay, let me think about this, and kind of thought about it. And I thought, you know what? I think there's stuff that I wanted to try and bring to the table. I thought there were some ways that we could deal with it and treat it a little bit like a business to some degree. So we've got our clients. Our clients are the kids to some degree, but they're also the parents, and maybe not everybody's bought in. So we need to make sure that everybody's brought in at different ways. We need to be able to help progress these young players, and give them all something new. I don't expect everybody to turn around to be the next Andrew Mertens or Dan Carter or whatever. What I want to see is that somebody started at a position and a knowledge area, and that they end the season at somewhere else, and that hopefully that's a forward movement, and hopefully that they've also had a load of fun and enjoyment whilst doing it. And yeah, it's had its challenges. I mean, you know what it's like, right? You're out there on a cold December morning and it's absolutely freezing. It's pelting it down with rain, and you've got 15, 20 kids there that probably don't really want to be there at that particular moment because they're freezing as well. And you've got to try and keep them warm and motivated and make sure that session is delivering what it needs to. But yeah, it was a fun decision, and I absolutely love it. Em asked me, that's my wife, asked me if I wanted to step down or whatever going into this new year ahead, and I was just like, why would I want to do that? This is prime time. We've had our first full year, and it's been exciting, and we've all gone on a journey, and we've learned, and now we're going to go into the next year, and we're going to grow on that foundation that we've built.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think some good advice from Cal there, as you mentioned, in terms of getting you to step into that role. And I think some really good parallels between, coaching kids rugby and business, as you've said, taking that team, taking those individuals, moving them forward, getting them to achieve in the next, maybe not quarter, but, the next year or whatever it is, the next match, even that growth, to be better than they were the previous time, they looked at themselves. So absolutely. And it's totally understandable. I expected the answer would be yes. There's leadership or commercial or employment skills that you can take into training rugby. But I guess swapping that round on its head, are there skills or are there things that you learned coaching children's rugby that you've been able to take into the workplace?
I always thought I was patient. And now I definitely become a lot more patient. And with kids, it's very easy to stand there and go, you need to do it like this. And it's the same in the business environment, right? You kind of look at it and think, line of least resistance, I know how to do it. There you go, I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it. And does the person actually learn from that? No. Are they actually able to perform that function? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, actually. And you just might not never know because you've done most of it for them. So the thing I've really learned with the kids is about trying to draw it out of them, get them to come up with the answer, and try and get them to use their brain. And now I try and do that actually and replicate that in the business world. So I'll be like, right, yeah, that's an interesting idea. So why is that going to work? How's that going to help us? What could we do? And just because I know where I want to take it, and let's see if we can take it there. But I want the other person to get there. I don't want me to tell them.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's not scalable and it's not sustainable if you're just kind of either pulling them along or pushing them along. So absolutely good advice there. And I think other things, when you draw parallels, is thinking about varying degrees of skill in the team. Having a sales team work for you, not everyone can be number one. And some are not going to perform as well as others. And, we see that on the rugby pitch, and sometimes on those cold December mornings, as you say, there are some kids that don't want to be there. Often you find in the workplace there are also people that don't want to be there. And I think for them, it's kind of more difficult to lead those people. So, it's I think quite good to see that you can see those skills working both ways. So, yeah, some really sage advice there. So going back to, I guess, your career, you spoke about making the move from Semantic to Snowflake. And, thinking about things like skills, obviously we've spoken about those, but risk, I guess, again, a general assumption, that people that are in sales and business development often have a higher tolerance for risk. That's why you take on commission-based jobs rather than, fixed salary. did that factor in your thinking at all, saying, Semantic's been around for close on, say, 40 years now. Snowflake, not quite a startup, I guess they've been around for 8 years or so. Did that play in your mind at all around saying, this is a big risk I'm taking now?
It was a big risk. I was riding the crest of a wave at Symantec. Symantec was in a really great spot. I think if you look at some of those areas I danced in, I kind of did a load of Cisco sales back in the day when networking and then UC was like the big thing. And that was kind of a trend that I'd recognized. I went to Symantec because I could see that security was the big thing, and it was on the up. I mean, you talk about Symantec being around, it had been, but security in general in the last kind of 5 years has really rocketed. And we've got to a point at Symantec where it had become almost like a commodity sale, and you turn up with this big platform, you're like, we can help you with your data loss prevention on premise, in the cloud, whilst also providing a managed security service that's going to be leveraging the endpoint protection and email protection and everything else. And it was a great story, and I loved the company, and I made some great friends there, and I learned a lot there. But I needed to change, and I needed to get out, and I looked at a load of jobs in security and a load of jobs outside of security. Fundamentally, for me, what was important, I needed to work for an organization that I believed in, that I respected the leadership team. So I got to meet the head of the UK, the head of EMEA, and more in all of the interviews that I progressed. And I actually got to a point where I was offered in 4 places, and I chose Snowflake out of the 4, and it was because it ticked the most number of boxes for me. But fundamentally, a scary shift, like you say. I'm going again. Yes, it's still within IT, but IT is so broad that I was moving into a sector that is absolutely in boom time. It's data. I'm going to an organization that is pretty new kid on the blocks, because our competition at Snowflake are Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. I mean, the only one that's missing there is Apple, right? I mean, of big organizations that you wouldn't want to be up against.
It's more competitive, yeah.
Yeah, but it's their technology, it's their leadership team, it's the way that they go about their business that I really liked and wanted to be part of that team. So yeah, I took a risk, taking a punt, but it's paying off at the moment, and we'll see. Podcast number 2.
Yeah, and I think the flip side to that risk tolerance as well. It also goes hand in hand with a structured approach to manage the risk. And that's what you talked through as well, and saying, well, it wasn't just a flippant decision and handing in my notice and off into the sunset. I go looking for another opportunity. So some good advice there, and I think also listing out those. I think, the obvious things that some people sometimes look for are the stability of the company and the sort of role and the size of the salary and all of those things. But then again, looking at a company that resonates with your values and kind of where you see it going, I think that's really good advice. So we've spoken a bit, we've spoken about things, I think, drawing out some of the bits that we've covered around pushing yourself and I guess accepting change, but at the same time, not accepting, no, you can't do it, or, it's you can't do it because you're too young or because you don't have enough experience or those sorts of things. What sort of advice above and beyond that would you give for people that were wanting to take on sales or business development roles, or not necessarily roles, but maybe responsibilities within their current remit? What are the sort of key things you might suggest?
I mean, I'm a firm believer that everybody is in sales, right? Every day of the week, every time you're talking to somebody, you're engaging in a sales process, because you're trying to convey something that you think to that person, and you'd like them to understand it and maybe convey a message back or whatever, right? So I do firmly believe that anybody can do a job in sales. I think different people have different skill sets, and you have to play to your skill set and make sure that the organization that you're working to are in that orientation. So some people might lean more in towards a technical sale and be better at getting into the technical detail versus somebody who might be more towards the kind of PR advertising end of the sales spectrum, right? And it's a broad brush, and everybody fits into those varying roles. I think always, yeah, research the organization, understand what it is that you want to get from that role. Make sure that you've researched as much as you can on the role and on the company and on the industry, and just take the risk, take the punt. There have been some people that I wish I could have recruited over the years, and when I say that, I'm talking about people that might have been serving a kebab at a doner kebab van or an ice cream down at the beach or something like that. When you see their natural just sales ability and they're just chatting away, and it's you could argue that those are sales roles because they're trying to get rid of a product to you. But yeah, it's all about anybody can do it. Anybody can do the job in IT specifically, but actually in that broader spectrum, and just making sure that you know what it is that you're going after.
Yeah, I think there's
Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I mean, I think the two key things that stood out for me, they were, when you draw the parallel to, someone selling food from a food truck, it's about those skills, because they can make it a pleasant experience for you as a customer or an unpleasant one. The product's still the same, so it's about understanding those skills and how you can apply them in different situations. And then the other one, I think that you said, which is really key, is understanding what you want. And, I think that for me is a starting point. So, before you understand where you're going, you need to know where you are. And then think carefully about what it is that you want to achieve and the direction you want to go off in. So, yeah, no, that's really great advice. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say one other thing on that is I'm talking to one of the technical people at the moment, actually, at Snowflake, who wants to get into sales. And it's definitely, why do you want it? If it's purely because it's about the money, then you could probably go and earn that money somewhere else. You've got to want to do sales, and it can be a tough career as well. There are calls after call after call, email after email after email that you don't get a response to, and you've got to have a thick skin to that and just brush it off and not take it personally. And it's not me that they don't want to talk to. They're just not talking to anybody. I did a pitch to the sales team at Snowflake just recently around, there's me and I've crafted this brilliant email and everything, and I think it's like a fine wine, and it's polished and beautiful, and it's got great legs and a deep body, and people are going to love it. But actually, what is it like for the customer? And the thing that I showed was a kid drinking from a fire hose, and it's just blasting the kid in the face, because that's what they're getting. Everybody's getting all the time. You're just getting hit by the world. So having that kind of thick skin and resilience is one key element, I would say, that you just need to definitely have as a salesperson. If you can deal with the rejection, then you'll love it, because the only way is up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's key, because a lot of people are going to say no. And again, it's very interesting that you bring that up. And again, one of the earlier episodes, I interviewed an actor, and, I guess unless you're one of the 2% of actors that are permanently employed, the Brad Pitts and those sorts of actors, there's a lot of no, and there's a lot of having the door slammed in your face, and you absolutely need to be resilient and be able to deal with that, because, otherwise that career is just not going to be for you. So great advice. Doug, you've shared so much great insights and some really good tips. So, this has been really insightful and helpful. And I guess before we end off, I'd just like to ask you a few short, sharp questions. Nothing that'll catch you out, I don't think. You've been on form, absolutely. I guess if you had that literal time machine available, what would you go back and tell your 18-year-old self?
just believe in yourself, and know that ultimately where I want to get to is I want to retire by the time I'm 55. If you look at it as a car journey, I could be driving that at night. I could see 200 yards in front of me, and that's all I could see. But I know there's an end game. I can't see three-quarters of the journey in front of me, but I know that I can get there, and I've just got to just keep following it through and just believe in yourself.
No, there is an end game. That's a great bit of wording. Super. Now, I've asked you about, well, I haven't asked you, but you shared some stuff around reading. You mentioned Stephen Covey a lot. You mentioned a book called Legacy. Any other good reads that you would say absolutely, pick that up?
So, Legacy, which was James Kerr. What It Takes to Be Number One, which is Vince Lombardi. That's a bit old school. I don't entirely agree with all of the methodologies in there, but it's a good read. Zig Ziglar.
Yeah.
If you can cope with the American twang, if you're doing the audio book, he's brilliant. Leaders Eat Last, which is the one that I'm doing at the moment. Way of the Wolf, it's an interesting one by Jordan Belfort. And then a game changer is The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. The Secret will change your life if you listen to it and take on its principles. And you can argue that it's a complete mind shift and mind change for a lot of people because it could be considered quite far out there. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but yeah, I would highly recommend The Secret. I know that I put the house that I live in, I put down to the fact that I bought that because of The Secret. The head of the UK at Snowflake, he has an amazing house and a brilliant lifestyle. He puts that down to The Secret. There are many people that believe in that book.
Okay, brilliant. I've definitely seen it advertised, and Amazon flaunts it now and again. But that's awesome. Yeah. I will definitely take a look at that. And as I said, I'll share all of these books in the show notes, so people can see all the detail. And then finally, before we close off, if people want to get in contact with you or find out more about you, how do they best do that?
Ping me through LinkedIn, absolutely. So Doug McGeachie. There's only 3 of us in the world.
Brilliant.
And one of those has recently passed away. The other one is just retired. So there's just me left. Or feel free to ping me an email at doug.mcgeachie@snowflake.com.
Okay, brilliant. And I'll put those details in the show notes as well. I'll include a link to your LinkedIn profile. So I think all that's left to say really is thanks so much for making the time available, Doug, and sharing your incredible story and all of those insights. There were some really good bits that came out here. So I'm really appreciative of that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gunther. It's been a pleasure. And if anybody can just take one small thing, then that's been absolutely amazing.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for that.
Cheers.
Thank you again, Doug, for sharing your story with us. It really was a great story. There were so many tips that I took from it, so many bits of insights that you shared. And I think there were some really good tips and strategies that people can apply. So before I end the show, I'd like to just play back some of those and draw out some of the ones that have really stood out to me. And I think 2 of the key things that Doug said were, one, being able to accept change and to be able to work with that. And the second one is pushing yourself. He used the example of, one, believing in yourself, but just not taking, if someone was saying to you, you can't do this, don't just take that at face value, really question it and prove differently. Again, mentorship came out of it when Doug talked about Kenny saying to him, you're wasting your life here. You need to get a different career and move on somewhere else. I think, again, it's really awesome that there are people out there like that are offering or willing to offer up advice and to help you on your journey, either get started or along your journey. So, never discount the power of having a mentor or number of mentors. Doug said some of the key skills that he found valuable in building this career in sales were the ability to engage with people. So, those people skills. Competitiveness helps, which, is a good point in both sport and in sales. A willingness to learn, and, the amount of material that Doug talked about. There's a load of books that he recommended. I'm going to list the key ones out in the speaker notes, and I will also do a separate blog post because post the interview, Doug shared a great list of reading material with me. So I'm going to write that all up and share that in a blog post. Resilience was a key one he spoke about. You're going to get told no a lot of times, and this is really important. We spoke about resilience in episode 3, I think it was, of the podcast with David Beanie. So again, go and take a listen to episode 3 and find out the importance of resilience. One of the really interesting bits, though, was the individual contributor role that Doug spoke about versus the kind of managerial role. And he drew out some of the key differences between an individual focus and a team focus, and how one, as a manager, you can use both to manage and build a successful team, but also as an individual to start thinking about where your focus lies. So again, some really good points there. In terms of learning, Doug talked about the importance of having a support network behind you and not being afraid to ask for help. Those are key things. I think many of us sometimes are afraid to ask for help, and it's not always a comfortable thing saying I don't know or I'm not sure, but I think don't be afraid to ask for help. And in terms of progressing on your journey or starting your journey, one of the key bits that Doug drew out was knowing what you want. And I think we spoke about this in episode 2 of the podcast, and it's really thinking about what you want, and whether it's a sales career, but thinking about different things. It could be account management, it could be cold calling, it could be whatever, but think carefully about what you want and build your goals around that. And even if it's outside of a sales career, understand what you want before progressing on this journey. And then I think, just to finalize, the same way I started the show, is just to reiterate that everybody is in sales, whether you're a formally titled salesperson, whether you do a little bit of it as part of your role, or whether you don't think you do it at all. Everybody is a salesperson. They are constantly selling themselves, and you need to be able to articulate the value that you can bring to an organization or to a team or to a group of people. So remember that everybody is in sales. And on that point, I'll end the show. I'll just remind everyone again about the review party. Please go ahead and leave a review, an honest review on the platform that you listen to this podcast on. Some allow reviews, some don't. I know Apple Podcasts definitely does. So please go along and leave a review and stand a chance to win a £15 Amazon gift card. I really would appreciate that. All the feedback is really valuable, whether it's positive feedback or negative feedback. It really just helps shape the direction and the content of this show. So please do leave some feedback, and I look forward to talking to you again in the next episode. Bye-bye and take care.